Welcome back to mckilliplife. My name is Amber, and today I'm going to be in the kitchen. This is the day after I made my first attempt at crumpets, and I'm going to have some butter and some jam on one of them for breakfast, or part of my breakfast. And I've had some thoughts. I watched the original crumpet video back from the maker, and his batter is definitely looser than mine. So today I want to retry the crumpet recipe and try making it with, rather than 100% hard wheat, do like 3/4 hard wheat and 1/4 soft wheat, so that it has less gluten and the batter isn't as sticky and structural. Also, I'm going to try not whisking it as long, so you're not making as much gluten in the whisking process. And in order to make it easier and have a more controlled temperature for cooking, I'm going to pull out the pancake griddle, because that can actually set to a certain temperature and leave it, and then supposedly it holds that temperature. So with those, three different changes, we'll see how they come out. So I'm not going to film the whole thing. I'll just pop in and show you, how the batter's looking, when I'm bringing it together, how it looks after it proofs, what it's like to cook them, and a little wrap up in the end. So we'll see if these changes make a difference. So here I am measuring out the wheat. That's the hard wheat, and this is gonna be the soft wheat. It turned out to be 45 grams soft wheat and 135 grams hard wheat. Next, I'm going to be mixing the batter, and this clip is sped up to 5 times the speed, so in actuality I was stirring very slowly and gently, just until I didn't see any more lumps of flour. So here's the batter after it's been proofed. It's bubbly and happy, and it's a little bit looser than the last time, but not a whole lot. I guess there's less strings, I don't know. So I'm preparing the griddle, and you can see it's one big flat griddle. I have it set to 350 degrees, and I'm filling up the molds. On this day, I have the sound off for the video because I'm doing laundry in the background. The washing machine and dryer are right behind me. Here I've decided to add some water to the batter just to try to loosen it up a little bit. Not very much, probably maybe a tablespoon, maybe 2 tablespoons. Because like I said, on the video that he did, his batter was looser than what I'm seeing in my bowl. And as I was waiting for the crumpets to cook, I decided to add a little bit more, but still very little, maybe a teaspoon. Overall on this day, making crumpets took probably about an hour. It's a very slow process, especially when you only have 2 molds to work with. I tried taking off the molds a couple different times and they weren't quite ready because these were very thick. And as you see, when I'm taking off the mold, there's quite a bit of batter stuck to the strips of silicone. This first attempt at crumpets were very thick, very similar to my first time of making them in the previous video. And just like the previous one, this one had the most golden and crispy bottoms out of all of my attempts on this day. A lot of what I cut out of this video was me waiting around watching them cook, or wandering around and cleaning things as waiting for them to cook. Here's my second attempt at the crumpets. You can see I put a lot less batter in each ring, just 1 spoonful, making sure it goes up to the edges. And like you saw before, I added some water so the batter was much looser. Here I am thinking, well, let's try again. Let's see how thin the batter needs to be for this to work. So I'm adding quite a bit more water. In this addition of water, the batter became basically a very thin pancake batter, almost like a crepe batter. It was very thin and very watery. I wanted to find out what I needed to do to make this process work. So this was very, very exciting. I'm pointing to a bubble, and that was a part of the video he had that never happened on my last attempt of crumpets. So I was waiting for them to cook. I decided to cut my first attempt in half. It got a little bit crummy, so I had to move it away from the griddle. And the inside was very similar to my very first attempt. It was damp. It felt a little bit undercooked. So he said when the top started drying out and the bubbles were there, go ahead and pop the bubbles so you're creating more nooks and crannies for your butter and jam to get into. And honestly, this was a very fun process and I enjoyed doing it. It's time to take the molds off of our second attempt, and as you can see, they're sticking quite a bit. Here I am flipping the second attempt and the color is really good. For the third attempt, I decided to grease the inside of the ring with olive oil. Setting up for the third attempt. And this is the thinnest batter. Not putting much in, just a little bit more than a spoonful to cover the bottom. Here's a close-up of the second attempt, and I think it turned out really well. And here's comparing the first and second attempt, and you can see the first one is very, very thick. Here I am splitting our second attempt. It looks more aerated than the first one. And for the third attempt, I did pop bubbles. So for the third attempt, taking off the rings was a whole lot easier. Nothing stuck, came right off. For the rest of the crumpets, I used this batter up. So from here until the end, it was all basically the third attempt crumpets. But for the sake of this video, I'm only showing one. You can see flipping them, they have decent color, really reminding me of pancakes. While those were cooking, I decided to put some of the other crumpets back on the grill, just trying to get some more color on them. These were still pretty pale, but they looked cooked, so I went ahead and took them off. And continued cooking crumpets. And in a little over an hour, I was done making crumpets and had some thoughts about the whole process, pros and cons. So for a wrap up on Crumpets Take 2, this was about the thickness of my first attempt, and you can cut it open. It reminds me of an English muffin, but it's not going to be an English muffin because it's a lot more moist. So my first attempt. My second attempt, it's quite a bit thinner, about half as thick. It has the brown bottom and the bubbly top, which is what I understand is a good crumpet. And then my third attempts are much thinner, much more pancake thickness, but they also have the crispy bottom and the bubbly top. So my takeaway is, I don't know that the flour composition makes a big difference. I think I could probably do it with 100% whole red wheat flour and have no problems. I don't really think it's a gluten issue. I think it comes down to freshly milled flour is thirstier than store-bought flour. So when I mix up the batter and pull it out, it's going to be a lot thicker than the batter that he was using. So it simply needs a little bit of water. So on my second attempt, when I added the water for probably 2, maybe 3 tablespoons of water for the whole batch, it thinned it out and it worked really well. And I think that resulted in actually the best crumpet. The right thickness, the right texture, all that fun stuff. From attempt 3, I think what was really good was greasing the inside of the ring. So I think if I'm doing this in the future, I would mix up the recipe as he says, but with red hard wheat flour. And then when it comes out of the proofing stage and I'm getting ready to use it, add some water to thin it down. And when filling my rings, you know, my rings are maybe an inch tall, maybe an inch and a half. And so with that, just basically cover the bottom of the pan. Don't try to fill it up. Don't try to fill it up halfway. Just cover the bottom. And then that would equal this thickness and texture. I think it'd be really good. And I think in doing all this, I've come to understand crumpets better. I've done more research as I went along. And people were saying, I was asking, what's the difference between a crumpet and a pancake? And it basically came out as it is a pancake, it's just a leavened pancake. So it's a pancake with yeast, and so it'd be bubblier and taller and fluffier. And so it's kind of funny because as I was cutting them open to see the center and everything, I was like, would I ever cut open a pancake? Not really. So I don't know that cutting them open is really necessary, and it explains why they're more moist, because pancakes are moist. They're not necessarily a biscuit or a muffin texture. But then again, I read and hear people talking about toasting and cutting open crumpets and toasting them and putting on butter and jelly. So, you know, with this thickness, you can cut it. When you get down to this thickness where it's more of a pancake, no, you can't really cut it. It's silly. Just toast the whole thing. So that's my take on crumpets and using freshly milled flour. And I'm looking forward to having these as breakfast. I've really enjoyed just sticking them in the toaster and having them as my toast. And knowing that I'm eating something that's whole grain and has all the benefits of the whole grain with the fiber and the germ and all the vitamins. So I hope my adventures in crumpet making has been entertaining and enjoyable, if not educational. Thank you for joining me in the kitchen, and this is a new channel, so please consider liking and subscribing. Have a good day.